Staffing update. Josh Barber has been a blessing in so many ways in the life and worship ministry here at church. His energy, his humor, his skills, and leadership gifts have helped us move forward in a number of areas. We thank God for all Josh has done to serve and lead at church. There are times when the needs of a church and the skills of a staff member no longer align in the way both parties envisioned. Sometimes that requires each party to take stock and make changes accordingly. As a result, Josh has completed his time on our pastoral team. Our love and our prayers go with Josh and Kathy and the kids. They've been a blessing to us in so many ways, and our desire is that God would blah, 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 blah. This is the statement that they released. Welcome to the Dad Challenge Podcast. My name is Josh, and we are on episode 4 of Why I'm an Ex-Pastor. This story exploded. Wow. Here's the thing I'm taking the most from this whole story, my story, this whole situation, is that there are literally thousands, if not more than tens of thousands of people who have been hurt by the church, or a pastor who has been hurt, or a ministry person, or just a regular attender who have been hurt by the church, who have never spoken up, and who are hearing this story and are all of a sudden like, wait, we're allowed to talk about this? I thought it was a sin. I thought that I would be struck with lightning if I told my story, my truth about the way the church hurt me. This is the craziest thing. There are so many people out there, and I've gotten hundreds of emails, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, people just messaging me with their story, just unloading their therapy, and I'm here for it. I'm here for you. I've decided that, again, I'm going to take it over to the Burnt Out Pastor YouTube channel. We're going to continue this a lot. This is now my new passion. I still going to keep my old passion, but this is also a passion. So thank you for hearing my story. There are a few people I've gotten some hate from, and I totally expected it, and I'm not even mad. I get why people are upset. There are people out there who are just relieved that this is out there, and I'm so glad that I could be that person for you. No joke. I'm so excited that my story, even as hard as it is to hear sometimes, can be a place for you to have freedom to tell your story. I don't want to equate it to the Me Too movement. It's nothing like that. But definitely this might be the start of a different kind of movement. A movement where pastors start speaking up for themselves and standing up and not being burnt out and not being treated like dirt and not being pushed out and just having a platform to whistleblow, to call out the bad actors, the bad behavior, and those pastors that are a bunch of dickweeds. This has now become that platform for me. This is going to continue. So let's get into part 4 of the story. Now, I read you the staffing update. A friend of mine sent that to me. The thing that pissed me off most about this staffing update, now, if you were to read this update, and you knew me, you go to my church, you know that I'm a worship pastor, I haven't been around for a bit because I've been on leave, all of a sudden you get this one day, 6 months into my leave. What do you think when you read that? He definitely had a moral failing. Nothing in this statement says that we fired Josh from the church. Nothing here came across that we let him go because he wasn't a fit anymore. We let him go because he was becoming too much of an influence. We let him go because he was asking hard questions, right? We let him go because he took parental leave. None of this here tells a truth. This was the reason that this was one of the main reasons and main factors that I decided I'm going to be out here and I'm going after my justice. Through my lawyer, okay? Specifically, I told them that when they put out this bulletin or whatever they're going to put out in their message, that they are not allowed to tell people that this was a mutually agreed upon thing. They're not allowed to be vague about what happened. They are to tell people that they let me go. And this is what they came out with. Here's the danger, okay? Look, it's not that maybe they were trying to, some of you might say, hey, look, maybe they're just trying to be nice and not, kick you while you're down. Maybe. Nope. Okay, they wanted to control the optics like they did for the 9 people before me that they pushed out. They need to control the narrative because they don't want people asking questions. We're going to get to that in a minute because people asked questions. Oh, did they ask questions? What this tells you, and this is a narrative. This isn't the pastor. Well, maybe it is. Maybe the church's fault for whatever for this type of community that we've fostered. That when a pastor all of a sudden disappears, something went down. He had a moral failing. He's an alcoholic. He definitely does cocaine. He cheated on his wife. He did something terrible. He stole. He whatever. He abused a kid. This type of thing is what goes through people's brains. So when they put such a vague statement out like this, they're allowing people to just make up whatever thing they want. And here's why it's dangerous, because even when people went to ask them what happened, they're like, we're not talking about it. They literally took the stance that we're not talking about it. I have a recording of a team meeting that they had after I was fired. The worship team got together with the lead pastor, and he had to do this meeting because people were asking so many questions. And trust me, he did not want to do this meeting. This guy is so far removed from all the ministries, and he just runs the whole thing. He's like he's like Jeff Bezos. You think Jeff Bezos comes down to the Amazon floor and, hey, helps pack boxes or talks to the staff that are below? No. This lead pastor was Jeff Bezos. He had to come down to this level and talk to these people because there was outrage. What the hell happened? Why is he gone? Because I'm starting to tell people. People are asking me, and I'm telling the truth. I'm saying they fired me because I took leave, and people are like, what's going on? They know. So he calls this meeting, and one of my guitar players reaches out to him and says, look, why don't we have, at my work, we do this thing where we can give anonymous questions. Look, we know you don't want to answer a lot of questions because they've been saying up to this point, we're not answering questions. But the lead pastor finally said, okay, we're going to get together. We're going to answer your questions. Okay. And then this guy said, look, let's put these questions up anonymously so you don't know who's asking. So we don't get, and it's crazy that you have to ask that because you don't want to get kicked out of the church for asking hard questions. So he agrees to it. Everybody throws their questions forward. They get to this meeting, and I have a full recording of it. Okay. I do have a full recording of it. And the lead pastor just basically says, I'm not answering any of these questions. He just says, and here's what's going forward. And then and then a bunch of people ask him questions he could answer, like, what's going next? Who are you going to hire? And what does the job look like now that this guy, you burned him out, and what happened? And he was just being inundated with all these questions, and he wouldn't answer anybody's questions. He's basically like, we're going to go the same way. We're going to do the exact same thing. We literally are going to hire and do the exact same thing we just did to this person, except we're going to give them less power. That's all they changed, was that this person no longer had executive pastor privileges and powers. That's all they changed. So they weren't answering any questions. And I told them in my podcast I released early, I said, you guys go ahead. You have my permission to say whatever you want about me. Okay? Because I'm going to talk about you. So now you should put your truth out there. And my lawyer specifically told them what we agreed upon a message to put out, and this wasn't it. And they just put this out because, and I think they probably changed that last minute. Lead pastor said, no, we got to put this up properly because they were hearing about it already. Where is this guy and his family? His family and his kids who have friends here. Like his wife was serving here. Everybody, like they're just gone all of a sudden. And so I walked out of that meeting, pressed stop on my phone. I walked out of that building for the last time. Okay. Got in my van. I called my wife and I broke down. I said, I got fired. And she could not believe it. And I was just broken. And here, like, it's crazy because you drive away from this place, a place where your kids love to go, that have a ton of friends, where I had friends, my wife has friends. We have this community of people that loved us, that we loved, that we built into, and these volunteers and everything that I built. And in an instant, because I did something they didn't like, I was let go. And I drove away. Talked to my wife the whole way. I cried. I've never been fired from a position. Like, I just never have been. So it was just so shocking. Like, it wasn't shocking because I knew going in I was going to get fired. I had that feeling, right? I had that gut feeling. And so that started it all. And then so, of course, I went home, and ringing in my ears was like, tell us right away your decision is. Please let us get back to us. Keep the lines of communication open. Keep this confidential. And I'm like still buzzing about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Panic again, right? I had anxiety and it was rising up, and I just was driving hands on the wheel, and I was just like having a panic attack on my way home, and it was just so scary. I had to pull over. It was rough. And I imagine these guys were probably like, whew, that's done. Great. So, and then just like, they thought it was just all going to go away. They were wrong. And so this is the aftermath. This is what happens. And a lot of you out there who are in ministry who know this, you might get this in a bulletin and say, oh yeah, okay, he probably just left, or he probably, went off the rails and went to Mexico and got a bunch of tattoos, and, now he has STIs. It's not what happened. And that pisses me off because people were kept, to this day, people will come up to me like, why did you leave? I'm like, you shitting me right now? I didn't leave. You don't want to know. You didn't want to ask the questions. I didn't leave. I was fired. I remember going to Walmart, and there was one of the staff ladies there. I loved her. She was great. Her husband was there, and he's like, hey, long time no see. He doesn't work there, but he knows me. He's like, so what happened? He's like, I heard you're not there anymore. I'm like, yeah, I'm not there. I got fired. He's like, yeah. I don't want to know. Literally, that was the conversation. No, I don't want to know. Thanks, though. And then left. Nobody wants to know. Nobody wants to know. They don't want to know how the sausage is made. They just want to enjoy the frank. They don't want to know. That's one of the biggest, craziest parts of this entire story. And we're going to get into more parts of the story. So I left, talked to my wife. We obviously immediately went and got a lawyer because I know what they did was illegal. And I'm like, okay, well, let's get this started. And I went to a lawyer. Then the first thing the lawyer said was like, you have a human rights violation here, just so you know. I had all my receipts and my paperwork and everything I needed. And she's like, you basically could take this to a human rights tribunal. So let's figure this out. And so we went through a bunch of stuff, back and forth lawyers, and it's expensive. Okay. It's so expensive. And here's the thing that really bugs me about this whole thing. One of the biggest ones is that I had to come out of pocket a lot of money, 5 digits minimum. Okay. A lot of money. The church, these 2 dudes who made this decision, by the way, and we're going to get to that in a second too, because they said that it was the elders that helped them make the decision. And we're going to get to that, and we'll tell you the truth about that. They now get to just lean back into the church pockets, the tithe bucket, pull out as much money as they need for their expensive lawyer, and literally just hit me with lawyer stuff until I'm broke. This is why people don't fight back. We can't afford it. I can't afford. I have to feed 4 kids in my family. I now have no job. I'm not on EI anymore. I've got nothing. I am empty and broken. I've nothing. And I have to pay a lawyer. I had to ask my father-in-law for money. I hate doing that. And it's a pride thing. Oh, don't just pride. And of course, my in-laws are willing to help me and all that stuff. And that's amazing. I had friends who were willing to help me, but I'm like, I'm doing this. I'm doing this. So I went to the lawyer, and then and then she's like, do not speak to them again. So I'm like, of course not. And he kept texting me and trying to FaceTime me. And I'm like, piss off, bruh. I ain't speaking to you. I was like, and then of course the anger started swelling as I started understanding what was going on. And my wife, I showed her the recording. And my wife, you have to understand, my wife is one of the biggest proponents for underdogs. She often will think the opposite of what I think about a person and say, well, no, maybe this, and give them always gives people the benefit out. Even sometimes I'm like, it's not true, but that's who she is. She's a sweetheart. She's a better person than me. And that's who she is. And then she heard the recording and she's like, holy shit. If my wife says holy shit, it's holy shit. Okay. Cause my wife doesn't even swear. So it was holy shit time. So she heard it, and then the ball starts rolling. Get to the lawyer. Lawyer drops me because she's just like, this is too big of a case. This is not something I can cover. So I find a more expensive lawyer. And I just keep going through this. And again, they have the deepest pockets because none of their skin's in the game. They can pay $100,000 to this lawyer because this whole board of elders is full of wealthy people. Which says a lot of things, right? It says a lot of things about privilege. That these wealthiest people in this elders board, not everyone was super wealthy, but the majority of them were millionaires or 100 millionaires. Like, I know that one member of this board, of the elders board, literally bankrolls this church. When the money's low, he writes a check. Like, doesn't matter. He's got more money. He'll never be able to spend his money. And he bankrolls the church. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. What you're going to do with your money is your business and you can tax write-off and all that stuff. But they had unlimited funds to fight me. And they were going to take all the money they needed and tear me down and break me down. Okay? But they forget that I am, and say it with me, a proponent of justice. I do not lie down. I'm stubborn and to a fault, my wife would tell you. But I'm not going out like this. Trust that, brah. I ain't going down. Back and forth to lawyers and she's like, look, we have a human rights thing here. And their lawyer is like, well, we got to, we don't think that's the case and blah, blah, blah. Like, well, yeah, it's the case. So let's figure this out. We want this much. I can't talk about severance with you guys. I just can't. That's one thing I won't talk about because I'm definitely not supposed to talk about that. And I was like, look, I want this. And like, unless you give me this, we're going to a human rights tribunal. And my lawyer and everybody was like, don't do it. I met with a couple of ex-elders who left the church because they just didn't like the way the elders. And this is a narrative here. A couple of these elders that left, left because the elders were in a position to change, and they said this. They were in a season of uncorrectness or incorrecting. They would not correct, meaning the executive pastor was supposed to go years ago. But because the lead pastor and the executive pastor were elders and voting elders, there's no way they're going to vote themselves out. It's like politicians. They always vote for their own raises. There's no way these guys are going to vote themselves to be fired, right? And so they were in the season of incorrectness. And these very powerful, very smart, very dedicated people left the church because they're like, I can't be a part of this anymore. But they even told me, don't do this. It's going to get crazy. It's going to get dirty. Everything's going to come out. I'm like, let it come out. I've got nothing to hide. I was fired legally. I did my job more than most people, worked more hours than I told you guys. A conservative estimate of like 675 hours of overtime that I worked. Okay, conservative estimate. So the ball's rolling in this thing. And one of the questions that happened at that meeting I told you guys about was a person asked, why was Josh not afforded the same, there's a protocol at this church, okay? And when someone's doing something wrong, you get like, it's like basically like a 3-strike rule. They bring you aside. They're like, look, we feel like this is going on and we need you to fix that. And then we're going to give you a month or two to kind of correct it. And if we see that everything's good, you're good to go, right? They do this because that's what grace is for, right? Then they're not going to fire you for no reason unless you do something terrible. And this church has a history of other pastors, and there's like been some sexual assaults and abuses and stuff that they keep quiet. And when there was one in my time there, a youth leader did something to a teenage girl, I think it was. They had a big emergency giant meeting with the executive pastor, who's the guy that's like, nobody speak to the media, nobody say anything. If anybody asks you, call us. Don't say a word to anybody. No transparency here. Don't talk about it. So we were like, okay, and we would have been fired, obviously, right? So anyway, at this meeting, and this guy asked one of my close friends, he asked this question. He's like, why was Josh not afforded that same privilege? Why don't you just bring him in and say, look, we're having these issues with you. We think that you need to get better at this, or we think you're unhappy here, and we want to figure out how we're going to fix this. Why was he not afforded that same privilege? No answer. They didn't have. I'm not going to answer this question because Josh is not here to rebut or to protect himself or to answer back. That's what their whole answer was. He's not here, so we're not going to answer questions. And to this day, they've never answered anybody's questions. To this day. And so many people have asked questions and gone in there. I got a call tonight from a guy who serves at that church, and he was pissed. He's basically he wanted to walk in there. I was talking. He was like, I want to throw my keys on the table and say, and he said that, F you, I'm out. Is what he wanted to say to the executive pastor. I said, look, that's not what I'm doing this for. I don't want you guys to go in there and just to tell the pastors to F off, you're leaving. How does that help anybody? You need to stay there and affect change. You need to tell people and spread the word about what's going on. That's what you need to do. Don't leave. And so these people are all like asking questions, and they're not answering anybody's questions. They're just staying mum on it. Staying mum. They don't want it. It's such a political way of doing things. It's like so crazy. If you don't answer the question, eventually it goes away. People are just not going to keep asking the question, right? And so that was going on, and people were worried, and the worship team was falling apart. People were leaving left, right, and center. Like they were struggling. Now they don't have anybody, and that intern that they had, he left, so they have nobody. And they brought back the pastor before me, who absolutely did not want to do it, and they put it on him, and he had to redo it, and he had to go for it again. That poor dude. What a great guy he is, and such an amazing guy. And he's stuck between this rock and a hard place because he's a yes man, and he's been there for so many years, and he's such a graceful, awesome dude that he's not a hateful bone in his body, so he's stuck in the middle because he understands what's going on with me, but he has to do what his leadership says because he has to submit. So they put him back in the role, just like, here you go. Like I did when the tech director quit. Well, this is you now, so enjoy. And so I want to take you back to, the first video where I was leading the worship and I was saying the thing. This. So how many people in this room have had a bad week? You don't have to put your hand up. You can if you want. How many have had a bad month? How many have had a bad year? Something devastating happened to you. I mean, think about that for a second. Think about that thing as a wall that's kind of around you that blocks you. You can't get through it, can't get over it. It's just there, and you've asked God a million times, please get rid of this wall.
This has happened before in your life, and God did it, right?
That night happened 2 days after this, after I was fired. And that's why I was saying those things. I was broken down so hard at that concert or whatever we were doing there, that worship night. I was broken down so hard that I was like, I don't even think I can do this. And I talked to the leaders of that thing, and we all had an agreement that, look, you just do it. You know, maybe this is what you need. Maybe this is your therapy. And it was. They were right. And so I went up on stage and I just poured my heart out. And that moment at that church, and this isn't a cockiness thing. I'm not saying that I'm anointed or blah, blah, blah. That song and the way that I spoke and did the passion with that song resonated with so many people in that room that night that it's probably one of the most memorable songs of any of these events that have ever happened. People came up to me after in tears, just pouring out like, I felt what you were going through. And they didn't know I was fired or anything like that. Nobody knew at this point. Nobody, because I was supposed to stay silent on it. I was supposed to keep it confidential. I was scared if I didn't, I would be sued or something. I don't know. So people would felt that presence that was coming out of me. And that night I was broken. When I was leading worship, it was just my moment to like take it all apart, leave it all behind me, and just go forward with this moment, this night. And it was very refreshing. And it was very freeing. So I just wanted to say that. I just forgot to say that last time. But again, I just want to go back to this narrative and the things that they're saying. The church wants to keep these things silent, and it happens all the time. And when people don't speak up and ask why people were fired, and they don't continue and ask, then they just forget about it, and the church gets to get off scot-free. Because a lot of churches get these pastors, and I know the 9 that I met with before, they all signed NDAs. They all signed agreements saying, okay, I'll take my severance. I'm not going to talk about it. Stop signing NDAs, pastors. There is no reason on earth a church should have a stack of NDAs. If your church has non-disclosure agreements, and you know that they had non-disclosure agreements, leave that church immediately. That is a church that is not willing to be transparent with its people that are literally the people who are the church. These leaders are not they're leaders, they're teachers. They're not leaders of the church. The people are. Okay? So if there are non-disclosure, and I get sometimes there has to be for certain things, sure. I'm not saying there's never a reason for a non-disclosure agreement, okay? But when it's because you got fired and they're giving you money and you're just shutting your mouth because you're getting money, don't ever sign a non-disclosure agreement. Okay? I didn't. I got tricked into signing that one thing that doesn't allow me to reach the recording, but I did not sign a non-disclosure agreement, which is why I'm here. There's so many people that sign these things, and I want to talk about the people that left before me. I know I'm getting off on a million tangents. Tonight's going to be a long one. I'm really sorry. I filmed these the night before and I upload them in the morning, just so you're aware. And so there's so much to talk about. So I met with the 9 people over the time of the lawyers were speaking. And here's one thing that pissed me off a little bit. My lawyer is very expensive, okay? And in an email, she's like, I'm getting to know their lawyer, and she's really nice. We had a great conversation. I'm like, what? Why are you getting to know this lawyer on my dime? There was a telephone call that cost me $670. I'm like, don't get to know this lawyer. The lawyers, are good when you need them. But this lawyer literally was like getting to know this person and probably shooting the breeze. Hey, what's going on? We're lawyers. Money, money, money. Every minute they talk on the phone, they make tons of money. Like tons of money. So I was a little bit pissed about that too. Like she's really nice. Their lawyer's really nice. I'm like, no, their lawyer's not nice. She's trying to bury me. That lawyer is crazy. Do your job. Okay. So I wish I knew lawyers. I need to make friends with lawyers so that I can trust those people. That was a hard one because I paid a lot of money for that lawyer. A couple emails, $300. I'm like, what? Are you writing a novel? Are you J.K. Rowling writing Harry Potter to this lawyer? Please, just be quick about it. And it went back and forth so many times. And they were lowballing me. They came back with, no, we're not going to give you anything. I'm like, well, fine. I told my lawyer at one point, let's just take this to the human rights. Tell them this is my final. No more talking after this. We're done. Bye. See you in court. But lawyers, and I don't know if you guys have had experience, if you've dealt with this, but they are like, no, we don't. They at all costs want to avoid going to court. I don't know why. They make more money. But at all costs, they want to settle outside. At all costs. And she pressured me to settle outside of court. And I have some phone conversations with her that I have recorded. I record everything after this now. I walk around the street, I just record everything. Hello, mailman. I record that. Hello, 7-Eleven Slurpee guy. I record that. I'm just saying. I don't, but I'm saying now I'm so scared that no one will ever believe me that important conversations I do record sometimes. So that sucks. Anyway, so I met with a bunch of people before that had been pushed out that I knew had been left, or they resigned, or they were fired, or they were A lot of them just get pushed out and say, look, we think it's time. Do you think it's time? Let's just give you some cash and beat it. Right? And they're like, okay. A lot of them are like already sick of it already and they're done with ministry and this is free money for them and they take it and they leave. They sign the NDA and they walk out. 9 people before me with this executive pastor. So as soon as this guy comes on, kids pastor is pushed out, his wife gets hired. And then people fall like dominoes. And the one common denominator is the executive pastor. And this is that's the incorrection that these other elders were talking about. This pastor was supposed to be gone a long time ago. He's ineffective. Nobody likes him. He's not talented. And so what is he doing here, taking a massive salary and his wife taking a massive salary? So people were just getting upset. I think even at one point, they kept hiring. So this guy comes in from this other church. He gets fired from his other church, right? Okay. He comes in after even people said don't hire him and the pastor still hired him. He starts headhunting and picking people from that church that he had relationships with and hiring them here. Literally pulling from that church and saying, come on over here. I'll give you a little bit more money. I'll give you whatever. And hiring all these people from that other church. Like I could count, like there's probably 5. I was pretty much the only main one that didn't have a connection to this executive pastor that was hired. Even the girl that they hired that was supposed to help me, she was connected to that church. They're hiring the communications pastors from that church. The campus pastor, the one that came into my office and was like, yeah, she's not doing that stuff. He was from that church and that circle. They were all from his little circle. And I think even at one point, this is conjecture. I don't know if it's true, but I remember someone telling me that at one point, the lead pastor's family took him aside and said, what is going on here? Why are you hiring all these people from this other church? What is happening? And he just said, look, don't worry about it. I'll deal with this. This is my job. Don't worry about it. Basically is what he told his family. And that's conjecture. That is not proven and it never will be, but that's what I heard. So there's a little bit of tea for you. That's kind of what happened. So these people, 9 people from the time this guy was hired till I got fired, that's 10 people in I think a span of 4 years. Something is up. So I started talking to them and we started having lunch and coffees for hours and just doing this type of thing we're doing right here. And talking about our stories and they're all lining up. They're all the same thing keeps coming up. I didn't fit into the slot that they wanted me to fit into. They hired me based on the things that I was good at, and they said, yeah, we want you for this. But because I didn't fit into that slot, I was gone. They pushed me out, or this and that. This was the narrative over all the things. This happened to so many people. And I'm like, okay, it wasn't me. Like you guys who were mailing me and messaging me and saying, look, I thought it was me. And I had that same feeling, like maybe I was a dickwad and maybe I was toxic, maybe whatever, right? So, and I was justified. So I heard all this stuff and it just made me more mad. And we all talked and some of them said, don't ever mention my name and I never will. And some of them said, don't mention my story because they signed non-disclosures and it's not my story to tell their story, right? So I'm going to respect it. But know that there are lots before me, okay? So that was obviously that, and I think they knew I was meeting with some of them. And it says a lot that these people are willing to meet with me and just dig the dirt out. Like, go for it. Like, I know this is anonymous, and you know, I'm not going to tell your story, but people were just willing to unload. And the things that I heard, and things that I've told you about my story, they had that or worse. Okay, that or worse. Imagine being pushed out and saying, here's some severance, blah, 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 go get another job. And then the literal executive pastor's wife takes your job. You don't think that's, and I think even at one point the guy said they brought me on stage after and they gave me this plaque and it was all this big farce. It was this big fake thing where they tried to make it look like I was leaving but they pushed me out. And later I've regretted it so badly that they did that. You know, the youth pastor left right after me and he went to be a lead pastor. He's a great dude. We got along. He was so cool. I knew he was on his way out too. And he served there for like years and years, like longer than most youth pastors ever served at a church. And there was no ceremony, just like in a bulletin, hey, he's gone, bye. Nobody gets it. When that person doesn't come up on stage after to have a hearty goodbye, something went down. Just so you guys know that. Here's a little bit of the sausage here, okay? If a pastor leaves and there's no ceremony or some kind of goodbye or send off or whatever, something went down. So when I didn't get up there and they didn't give me, a bouquet of flowers and some cookies and said thank you, people were like, oh yeah, he's definitely on the run from the law, right? Or something. I think I'm doing something. So that's, again, this comes back to this narrative of like they need to control the optics at all times. And so all these people who left signing NDAs and all these things, they don't want people coming back and telling the story like I'm doing right now. Because this is blowing up. And the church has already been doxxed like 5 times. I'm trying to delete the comments and I can't help it. I told them to delete my picture and stuff off their website. I told this other site to delete my picture off. So it's being doxxed and it's going to come out. And I'm sorry. And I don't mean it to happen. And I don't want you guys to ever go make, bad comments or do anything like that. I can't stop you, but I'm just telling you, this is happening. I'm getting calls already from people who still go there who are saying, I'm done. And I'm trying to tell them, stop being done. Don't be done. You need to be there. You're the one who's going to affect change. You're the one who can literally call them out and hold them to account. You can ask the questions. You're still there. If you all leave because of me, all the 5 people that care, then that does nothing. They get away with it. So don't leave, right? So that was a good conversation I had tonight, and it felt really good. And he apologized to me. He didn't need to apologize to me. He's like I feel really bad because, a lot of us didn't know anything, and we just didn't care. We didn't ask questions, and so, jeez. Yeah, I want to go back to that one thing too at the meeting that was recorded about not giving me the proper notice or whatever. So we hired a tech director, a young dude. He was a cool guy. We didn't really get along amazingly. He was just a quiet dude, and he just didn't do his job properly. I think he was in a little bit over his head. Okay, he went to Hillsong, and he thought it was a big deal there, and he was a good kid, and he was very talented at mixing. Very, very, one of the probably best live mixers I've ever heard. So he's got massive potential. But he dove into this job not understanding how much work it's actually going to be. He thought he was just going to be mixing. But nah, a tech director, and then a church of this size who makes you wear 10 hats anyway and overworks you. This kid was overworked, okay? And we were butting heads because he wasn't doing his job because I was overworked, and then it wasn't working. So sat down with the executive pastor. He's like, okay, we're going to give him give him 3 months to correct himself. Cool. They had the talk with him. He didn't correct himself. They gave him another month. He didn't correct himself. And then finally they said, look, this is your last chance. He didn't correct himself, and then they fired him. And, sucks for that kid. He was a really good guy, and I wish him the best. I know we didn't really get along very well, but I'm not the one who fired him. But he wasn't really doing his job, so he got this thing where he got to go through this process. And so apparently what I did was miss a MAP goal, okay, and express that I might have been unhappy. And so I didn't get any of that. I was not afforded the same privileges to say, fix this or whatever. None of it. Isn't that crazy? And I was there for 2.5 years as an executive leader pastor up here, doing my job, working my arse off, and I was not given any of that. And here's why I wasn't. And here's why they didn't wait till I got back to fire me. Because they were stuck between a rock and a hard place. Look, they could have waited till I got back, let me lead worship for a week or whatever, and then sat me down and fired me, and they would have been safe. Because they would have just, here's your severance, bye. And they wouldn't have had to worry about it. There wouldn't have been I probably wouldn't be doing this blog. I would have had no legal leg to stand on. I would have been like, okay, bye, right? But they were stuck between a rock and a hard place because I had already been gone for 6 months, okay? And because I was gone for 6 months, people when you're gone, out of people's minds, out of sight, out of mind, people are like, oh yeah, this is the new norm. And so if I would have come back, they would have been like, oh yeah, Josh, this guy's good. He sings and he's got his wife here, and the music is really tight, and the performance and the Sunday morning experience is better because Josh did that. I did that. That was my gifting. That's why they hired me. That was my gifting. And so they were stuck because if they brought me back, people would remember, and then they'd fire me, and then it would look worse. It was all about optics. So they were stuck, and they had to fire me illegally. And that they probably did an assessment. These 2 guys, they probably assessed, said, okay, what's the bottom line worst thing that could happen here, right? Josh could sue us or whatever, or we could lose 1,000 people because people saw that we were a bunch of chachi assholes, right? So they said, we're going to do this because we think that maybe they didn't think I was going to call them or call their bluff on it. Maybe they thought I would just sign the paper and walk out of the room with a severance, which was piddly, by the way. I'm not trying to say I was owed tons, but I'm like, are you serious? You're firing me illegally and you want to give me this? You crazy? So they were stuck between a rock and a hard place, and they decided to take the illegal route instead of taking the above reproach Christian route. Even though it would have been still pretty bad, it would have been the illegal way of doing it. And so I asked them in that meeting, I said, do the elders know that you fired me? Oh yeah, they all know. Okay. Are they all in agreement that you fired me? And this was one of the questions I was asked at that meeting as well. Yes, they all were aware, and they all unanimously voted to fire Josh. All of them unanimously voted to fire me. None of them, and this was all after I took my leave. They had all these meetings apparently, right? But they claimed to my lawyer that they were thinking about firing me way before I took my leave. And my lawyer said this to them, and I'll never forget this. This is the one good thing she did for me, okay? She said, we are happy to accept an email or something that proves that you were going to fire him before his leave. And if that's the case, we'll walk away. We will literally walk away and save you all of this. You wouldn't have to pay us anything, just normal severance, which is nothing. All you had to do was provide us with one inkling, a tiny bit of proof, one email, one text, anything that proves that you were going to fire him before he took his leave, and we will walk away. And of course they don't have that because they don't have it, right? Unless they want to manufacture it, but no, they didn't have it. And to this day, if they have it, if they can prove that they were going to fire me before I took my leave, like they said way before I was going to take my leave, I'd like to know why they're going to fire me first. But then I would humbly apologize and say, okay, I now believe you that you were going to fire me before my leave, and that's not an issue anymore. And then I would retract my statement that they fired me illegally. But until I get the proof, they fired me illegally. Okay. And so here, listen to this for a second. All of the elders sit on this board, and let me tell you, they're all very wealthy, very connected people, and they're a lot of them, except for I liked a couple of them. A couple of them were amazing people, and a couple of them were like just lifers, and a couple of them were like, I like this power, I like being in this position, right? Money, power, whatever. And so, but if you think about this, they all sat around in this room, according to the lead pastor and the executive pastor, which, by the way, is not true. But okay, according to the lead pastor and executive pastor, they all sat around in this room and all raised their hand. We're going to fire Josh while he's on parental leave, and said, yep, all in agreement. Here. Yep. All right, let's get some donuts and coffee. That's what they did. Think about it. Elders who are called by God to be leaders of a church made a decision to fire a pastor illegally. Are you catching it? Are you hearing that? None of them should be elders now. I'm not saying that you have to be perfect or without sin, but you literally decided in a room all together to fire me illegally. But from what I heard from a trusted, very trusted source, okay, a person I really trust, who has no reason to lie, who didn't even understand it could have been a lie anyway. He has no reason to lie about this. He said, look, I know one of the elders, and he didn't know. He didn't know. And I don't think he meant to tell me that at all. He knows this other person very, very closely, and he's like, he didn't know. So they lied about that. They didn't know, but they probably fired me, then met with the elders and said, we fired Josh. It was a bad meeting, blah, blah, blah. We had to let him go. So let's just say we all did it. Nobody's talking about it. Guys, if you go to church, if you know a pastor, hug them when COVID's over, okay? If you know somebody, help them. I'm going to tell you something. As a pastor, one of the hardest parts about being a pastor is that it's really, really hard to make close friends that you can trust. And every person in ministry is always there spiritually to help you, because you're there. A pastor's there to be like, look, I'm having this issue. Can you pray for me about this? People would come up to me with some of them was personal things and say, my husband's beating me. He's an alcoholic, or I'm doing this. I have drug issues and I need prayer. They come to you, and that can drain you. Like, you're there. That's your job. You signed up for this, but that can be so emotionally and spiritually draining on you. Okay. And if you have no place to vent or talk about your issues that you can release, again, you need therapy. Everybody needs therapy in the world. And it's not a negative thing. Everybody go get some sort of therapy by talking to somebody or something. This is my therapy. And so pastors really have a hard time finding people they can trust because, one, pastors have this really crazy pressure to be perfect, to look perfect, to have the perfect trophy wife, to wear the right clothes, to say the right things, the right language, to look, to smile, to hug, to be that guy every day. They have this immense pressure on them to be perfect and live above reproach. I signed up for it. I get it. I understood it. But when I don't have a chance, or pastors don't have a chance to release and therapize, that's a word I made up, therapize, TM, then it really, really becomes hard. And so when we do make a friend and a person that we can talk to and confide in, it's really, really awesome. And unfortunately, a lot of people just want to be friends with pastors because they're influencers. They're in their circle, and it's like, it's a status. Especially in the U.S. It's big in the U.S. That church I almost took in Texas, they call women first ladies. Like, the pastors' wives are first ladies, and they don't ever work. Their nails are perfect. Their cars are washed. It's a different world. And so when you make a friend, it's really hard. So I'm saying this to tell you that if you know a pastor, can you be that person for them? Can you emotionally be there for them so that and reach out to them and say, look, dude, if you need to go for a beer, a coffee, and literally unload all the bullshit that you go through day after day, I'm here to listen. I won't tell anybody. I'm here to hear you. Like if anything comes from this, be that person. If you go to a church or you know a pastor, they aren't going to ask you for it because they need to be perfect, right? So if someone comes and says, hey, I want to be that person for you. Oh, yeah, that sounds good. But they're not going to come to you and say, can you be my person that I can literally unload all the bullshit of my life? They're not going to do it because pastors have this obligation and pressure from the upper echelons of leadership to be perfect. And that is crazy. That needs to stop. We need to allow our pastors to be human. Amen? Just wanted to say that because that was hard. And when I left, I didn't have any friends. I had a couple that stuck with me and still to this day have stuck with me. And so many just ignored me and just don't want to hear about it. They don't want to hear the story. My wife said dance with my daughter, and one of the moms from the church was like, why'd you guys leave? And my wife's just like, and my wife it hurts her so much. She has to relive it every time. I drove by there about 6 months after this all went down, and I broke down because my kids had tons of friends there. They loved it. The big playground. They loved their friends. The Sunday mornings, the cookies and the juice and the running around and just being crazy and just like that was their joy. And this church stole that from my family. They destroyed it. Like I'm going to go back there. They destroyed that. They took that away. This church has destroyed so many lives. And I say destroy loosely. I didn't go off the rails, become an alcoholic, and I don't live under a bridge. But I'm saying this is devastating to a lot of people. And this is what happens when these churches destroy these people's lives and they leave ministry. I'm an effective person in what I do. Okay? Meaning I practice, I study, I do what I need to do to become an effective pastor. Meaning, how do I get people here? What we do is we draw them here. And then I can give them a message of hope or speak to them or pray with them or whatever it is. When a pastor is left behind or pushed out or whatever it is and leaves ministry, that ripple effect that they could have had in the world is this big now instead of this big. And unfortunately, it's the pastors who generally want to affect change and have the best, most important ripple effects in their sphere of influences are the ones who get the ripple effect truncated. The pastors who get to stick around and make all the big bucks and be the celebrities and everything else, their ripple effect is there, yes, but it's shallow. And eventually they all fall. Okay? You're going to hear about, look at Mark Driscoll. Look at McDonald. Look at Bill Hybels. You eventually get too big, you fall. Because every sin you're going to do is exasperated 100-fold. Because when you get into a position of power and money and influence and fame, even as a pastor, it will corrupt you indefinitely. Absolute power, money, fame corrupts every individual. I don't care. Maybe there's a couple out there that can get around it, that can skirt the issue. Read Francis Chan, Crazy Love. Francis Chan is one of the perfect examples of this, of a pastor who was like, look, people were starting to talk about me more than they were talking about God in my church, so I left. That is a good example of, but all these other pastors, this is all they have. And this, once you start making big bucks and big dollars and everything else and fame and your people love you and you're this person in a community that you're like above here and you're elevated, you get cocky and you get narcissistic about it all. And so these ripple effects that we've had and all my friends who were pastors have left. I got another, if you go to my podcast, you heard my buddy of mine, Nick, tells his story. He would have had an amazing ripple effect in ministry and now he's not in it anymore. I'm no longer in ministry. My ripple effect here could be negative and positive for the case of Christ. But I'm hoping it becomes a positive overall that the church can change their ways. This is why I'm doing this. Here's another thing. She also told my wife that they all got together after this, after they heard my recording, because they all had an emergency meeting and freaked out about it, right? She told my wife that they all got together and said, see, we were justified. Look at this guy. Look how off the rails he went. Imagine he would have stayed here. He probably would have been digging up dirt and finding stuff to talk about. They were like, see, they all pat themselves in the back. We avoided it. We dodged a bullet. Good for you guys. Let's eat some pie. Right? That's what they do at their meetings. They literally said that they were, look what happened. Thank God we did this. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus, for giving us the will to fire this guy illegally. Thank you. Just crazy. So what's happened since then? So I played that concert that you saw me at the beginning. I was broken at that moment. I applied for another church because I just wanted to see if this was what I want. And I was contemplating, do I stay in ministry? And I went down to Florida and I interviewed this giant, beautiful, amazing church, and I loved everything about it. And then halfway through that process, I'm like, I think I'm done with this. I really do. Because then I started hearing the red flags from that church. You know, huge exoduses of people leaving. And I'm like, there's no church that I can go to that's not going to have this kind of history. And that's sad. And I said, I think I'm done with ministry. At one point I just said, talked to my wife, and like, I think I'm done. I think I'm done with full-time as a career ministry. I'm never going to be done with like serving. I think, you know, I love worship. I think I have a lot to give at a place that does it right. And I want to tell you guys this because a lot of comments are like, you never mentioned Jesus. You never mentioned that it's not all churches. So let me clarify here, okay? It's not all churches that do this to people. It's a lot, but it's not all. So let's be real about it, okay? I know small churches that hurt people just as much. You know, it's all about pride. If you think about this, like, read this book, and I'm trying to interview this lady, and she's really cool. Read the book, The Devil in Pew Number 7, okay? And come back to me. There's just too much power in people in these churches who are in there for the wrong reasons. There's too many people in leadership in there for the wrong reasons. For power, for the clout it gives them in their communities, for being a person that's visible and like, oh, you're a leader and like, I love you. You're an elder. Can you sign my boob? You know, it doesn't happen that. They think in their head it's like that, right? So, but I'm going to serve at a church that as a volunteer, I'm going to take this enormous amount of abilities and talents I have, and I'm just going to give it to you because I think that's important too. And that's cool. And I went to a church and I found a place, and a little bit flaky, and they were good, but they were old school. And I'm like, I don't know if I like old school because I've been now bred into this whole excellence is everything, perfect music, perfect tightness, like the looks, the lights, and I just couldn't do it. And they were awesome church, I just couldn't do it. And then I got connected to this other pastor who I've been speaking to for a while, and he was struggling with the same things I was struggling with. In this community, there's all these pastors that get together and we talk, and everybody's struggling with the same thing basically, and that says a lot. So many pastors are just like, I'm stuck here. I have no other way to get out, but I hate it. And if you hate your ministry and if you hate being where you are, get out. Okay? Get out. You're ineffective. You're literally, if you hate the place you are and you're in ministry, a place of where you're supposed to have like grace and love and everything, get out. And so this pastor said, come on over here and lead worship here with us. And we were talking about it. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. And it was a church that was very similar, and the music was great, and they were they were transitioning through pastors and all this stuff. And he was like, we were close, this pastor and I consider us friends today still. And I really do believe what he says. But I said, well, just so you're aware, before we dive into that, and I would be happy to come serve with you, under you, I'm going to be releasing this podcast. And I told him, he knew my story because we had talked about it, and he's like, all right, well, he thought about it for a little while, and then he came back. He's like, look, if you're going to release the podcast, you're not coming here, basically. And he said it nice. And I'm pretty sure it was pressure from his pastors. I don't think he would have had a problem with it. And so this is not a narrative about him saying, oh, screw you if you're going to do that. But he's like, you need to have, he said some really powerful, potent things to me. He's like, you got to forgive these people. And he's right? There's a conversation to be had about that in the future, not today. But he's right. He's like, you gotta let this kind of go. And it's, yeah, everybody's right. You shouldn't be living with hatred in your heart or like this malice, and it does affect you. But if you can turn that into a generator of justice or into a platform for other people to tell their story and to affect change, then that's a good thing, I think. So if you could take all this energy and built up anger and all this hurt and everything else and ball it up and put it into a platform that allows people to tell their story so that it changes things for the better, I'm in. And that's what I'm doing. And so this guy's like, basically, you can't come here. So I was and this is one of the craziest things. So that lead pastor of that church definitely talked to him and said, don't let him come lead worship there. And he admitted it. And then there's this local thing that happens, that concert that you saw me at. It's this local thing where all the churches get together and they do this big concert. And it's an amazing event. It's just unheard of that cities do this. They get together, that this city does this. They get together, they did this concert, and it's just every denomination comes together and worships. It's incredible. That's what you saw me at that night. The next year I was supposed to lead. Okay, again. And I get a call from one of the leaders who was a close friend of mine as far as I was concerned. And he said, you know, this podcast thing is really starting to get crazy. Like, you're going to have to, take it down, basically. He's not a proponent for me doing this. He would tell you in my face, and good, because he's honest, like, what you're doing is wrong. Don't do it. And so he admitted to me too that lead pastor from that church that I was fired from reached out to him and said, our church will not take part of this if you let him lead worship on your stage. So he's in behind the scenes and here's the thing about that pastor too. I keep bringing stuff up. He has this little circle of pastors from the whole community that come to this church. He feeds them all lunch and he builds into all these young pastors. He sits down with them and they ask him how he does things, and they take notes and they learn from him. And he builds this community of people so that he has even more clout in this region. So I'm pretty sure even if I went to a church to lead somewhere, barring this video and all these videos, he has his hand in every other church because he's the biggest church in this region. And he has his hand in every pot. And so he's been telling people, don't let this guy lead worship. And I have proof of it. So, and then that event, I didn't lead worship at, because this is what happened. The sound guy reached out from the church I was from, the tech director, who I thought was my friend, by the way, clearly not, reached out to them and said, I'm not going to do sound at this event if he's leading here. Okay, he said that to them. So that's when that guy called me from the event and said, look, this is going down. Now we're losing our sound guy. Look what you've done. Look what you've done. Now I lost our sound guy. And I was like, well, I'm not leading then. Tell him to come back. He can lead. I'm out. I'm not having this drama. Okay, if you want to kick me out because the sound guy was told by the lead pastor that you can't lead here if he's there, so be it. I'm not going to lead. And and then I stepped back, because leading worship from a point of malice is a very dangerous place to be. Okay, you should not be leading worship with anger in your heart. You should not get up on that stage as a leader and get up there and basically lie to people, because you'll be judged for that. So I was like, I'm not going to get up there. There's too much drama happening around this. He's obviously reaching out to everybody and spreading these messages of not hate, but of careful of this guy. And so I stepped back, and then the S hit the fan. Okay. Then they were pissed at me and they were pissed at them, and it was just this big drama thing, and I didn't do it, and I will never do it to this day. I'm done with it. I'm not going to be a part of it anymore. If you're going to take what after knowing my story, these other people knew my story and still took this guy's side. Not maybe intentionally like that badly, but they took his side. And so my life has been super affected by this in many ways. I kind of been blackballed from the local community of worship leaders and being able to lead worship locally at the community. And I was kind of pushed out from this event that I love doing, and I'm never going to do it again. And, my name has been marred because this guy has way more influence in this community than I do. I'm a nobody here. He's been here for 30 years and built this church from nothing. And so and people are going to believe him because he's the trustworthy pastor, right? He doesn't lie. He's not going to lie to his congregation, except I have proof of it. Someone said I should do a transcript of the recording, so I think I'm going to do that. I'm also reaching out to a lawyer this week, and I'm going to talk about how can I release this recording publicly. Is there something that they breached so that I can say, well, you breached that, so this whole contract's in breach? Because even as the staffing update message that they put in the bulletin was, I think, a breach of contract, because they didn't say what we agreed upon. So there's a lot to be done here. Lawyers are expensive, so guys, bear with me. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't have a lot of money. I'm not saying that to say I'm poor. I'm not poor, but lawyer fees are just not something that's in my pocket right now. Okay, so it's not something I planned for in my budget. I'd rather take my kids camping and have some memories with them. But I will try to figure this out, because I know a lot of you want to hear the recording. And I think if this recording got out there, and I said this last one, at minimum, if this recording gets out there, these guys are going to have some heat, and one of them both of them are going to have to step down, because it's just undeniable once you hear it. So, holy smokes, all this, and you guys are still here, like an hour. You wanted it a long one. That was a long one. So we are going to carry this over to a new channel, and it's called the Burnt Out Pastor. I haven't got a name for it. I'll link it in the thing below. Go over there and subscribe. Start getting over there. I'm going to port these videos over there just so I have some content there. And now we're going to continue to tell all the stories that people are reaching out to me about. This has struck a chord, like unheard of chord. YouTube has a bunch of videos about ex-pastors, but nothing like this. And no, I don't think anybody has told a story as in-depth as this about the church. And so now we're going to continue it over on that channel. So I might come back here once in a while and talk about something, but there's so many topics I want to cover. There's so many things. Bethel. I want to cover that whole thing that's going on over at Bethel, and like the grave soaking, and the daughter that they left in a morgue because they were confident God was going to raise her from the dead. I want to talk about theology, like real stuff. I want to talk about the future of the church and where it's going and what it needs to be. I want to talk about pastors' kids. I want to talk about everybody's story who's reached out to me, and I want to expose it all. If you want to whistleblow in your church, I'm here for you. Let's do it. We don't have to do it with malice and content and hate and all that stuff, but we can do this. If you are brave enough to come out and talk about this story, I will be here and I will be your platform and I will help you get your story out. So reach out to me with your story. Let's get it done. Let's get it done for the right reasons. We're not here to hate the church, okay? There are so many great churches out there doing so many things. We're not here to detract from Jesus and what he did, because I'm pretty sure Jesus would be on my side on this thing. Jesus does not like religion, people. God hates religion. Organized religion is one of the worst things that has ever happened in Western culture for believers. Okay? It's a money-making, not scheme, but it's definitely a big business. Just the church industry in the U.S., church building industry in the U.S. alone is like 10 years ago was $10 billion a year. I don't know what it's at now. It's insane. Okay? It is a huge industry. And if I'm a person who's going to disrupt this, there is going to be some articles written about me. There's going to be hate thrown at me. There's going to be a lot of things happening, because this is an industry that makes lots of people lots of money. And it is a politically driven industry. Okay? Evangelical vote is huge. And so you tear down this institution, people are going to come after me. That's the truth. I'm not here to tear it down, though. I'm just here to try to see if churches can fix it a little bit and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't treat our pastors like bags of dirt. What a thought. And here's my big take on this whole thing. In the end, when all these boomer pastors and all these boomer leaders, and I say boomer not in a bad way, because there's amazing people who are from that era, but a lot of these leaders are still living in that era. Like, we want it this way and we don't want to change it. And those are the people who tithe, and those are the people that the churches bow to, because they're the ones who are paying for everything. When they're all gone and these new generations of leaders come up, we are going to see something like we've never seen before. And I'm so excited. So I don't hate Jesus. I love Jesus, okay? I don't hate the church. There are some amazing churches out there doing some incredible things. Like lifechurch.tv is a mega church, mega church. But one thing they do incredible is all the music and all the video production and everything that they pour money and time into and hire people for, they give it away for free. I love it. Craig Rochelle, great messages, just incredible dude. There are lots of great churches out there. Don't take what I'm saying is that every church is like this, because a lot of you people are saying that. It is not true. But a lot are. And so I want you to just trust your gut, be careful, don't be afraid to ask questions, and protect your pastors. Okay? Do that for me. So head over to that channel. We are going to continue this big time. I'm very excited about it because I am passionate about this, as you can tell. And it is something that I will not let go ever. I will be a proponent of justice for pastors. I will be the guy that affects change. And I hope a lot of people team up with me and just do this. I want to make a documentary about it. If you guys know documentary filmmakers, reach out to me. I need some help with that. I am in it. I am here for it. 2 hands up, right? Thank you for watching, you guys. This has been an incredible journey. I did not think it was going to be like this. I did not at all. I did not think this was going to happen. And so everybody who's here for this and hearing the story and supporting me, incredible. For those of you who have hard questions for me, awesome. Bring it on. I'm happy to answer anything. Have a conversation. You want to have a Zoom conversation, I'm here for you. Like, those people who think I'm doing some wrong, that's okay. Like, you can throw as much hate at me as you want. I'm here to talk about it, and I'm here to learn too. I'm not right about everything. I'm definitely not. But I'm here to just be a part of this whole process. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, hit the bell, or don't. You're my therapy, and I love you.